Melissa Taylor, Rock Reve, Jill Geary, Olivia Bentheim, and Javier Valdez. I just want to say that it's a commendable and courageous thing to do this, to put yourself forward as a civic leader and elected official. So I want to ask everybody to join me in thanking these 8 candidates for refrain from applause during the rest of the meeting. Sorry. All right, we're going to start with 2-minute opening statements. Randomly, I selected the 4th chair at the beginning of the meeting to go first, and we're going to go from your left to right. So Melissa, you'll start first, and I'll give you a mic here.
I'm Melissa Taylor. Over the past week, you've shared your visions for our collective future with me. We all want thriving communities with great public schools, excellent public transportation, affordable housing, solid social services, clean air and water, access to health care, and dependable roads, sidewalks, and culverts. We so deeply are proud to be in Washington, where we have led in so many progressive ways. And yet we are also deeply concerned that our tax system, the most regressive in the nation, will not support our vision. Our economy is leaving people behind, including people in this room who are not sure they can afford to stay. We deserve more economic justice from our tax system. It is unacceptable that the poorest people in our state pay a tax rate 7 times that of the wealthiest 1%. I have worked with legislators and parents across the state to fix our tax system so that our kids can access the education that our state constitution promises them. We are also concerned about our health care. This is an economic issue and a moral issue. Health care is a human right. Having worked at Providence and WebMD, I have seen the system from the inside, and I will use that knowledge to move us towards a single-payer system. I have a track record of delivering results in professional, nonprofit, and community contexts. I have PCOs, experienced advocates, parents, and state representatives who have seen me in action and know that I will deliver results. They know that this working mom, like Jessen, will work tirelessly and creatively to ensure that our laws reflect our values. I look forward to your vote on Saturday. Thank you.
Good evening, PCOs and others. Thank you so much for being here and participating in what has really been quite an amazing part of our democratic process. I've truly enjoyed talking with many of you and look forward to talking with more of you. I'm Lori Lippold, and I've lived in the 46th District for 31 years. I was born and raised in the Midwest and moved out here in 1982 after getting my graduate degree in social work, and was working in inner city Chicago with pregnant parenting teens. When I came out here, I continued to work in the direct service realm, and then in 1990 basically, started working in the public policy realm and have worked with legislators and in that arena since that time. The issues I've worked on in the legislative arena relate to child welfare, children's mental health, housing, poverty, economic injustice, racial equity, children's health care, juvenile justice, and more. I have had the opportunity to work with so many fabulous legislators. I know how the legislative process works, and actually I know what I think it takes to be an effective legislator when I see all the legislators I work with, and we've got some great ones in this state. I don't burn bridges. I'm not a lone ranger. I care deeply about the issues on which I work. I'm respectful of others, and hopefully I'm not too much of a pain when I'm doing my lobby work. When things get tough, I don't give up. I would work very hard on your behalf. I'm persistent. I work harder, I listen, educate, collaborate, and advocate. My work embodies my values, fairness, treating people with respect, and ensuring that all individuals and families have their basic needs met. I'm very lucky to be able to work on issues that fit with my passions. I know how to get things done. I believe my experience would allow me to really hit the ground running on day one. I look forward to this opportunity, and I thank you so much. I would love your support.
Hello everybody, my name is Nigel Herbig. I'm a PCO like many of you. I'm a former E-Board member on the 46th. I'm a Kenmore City Council member. And for the last 5 sessions, I had the distinct honor of working hand in hand with Representative Farrell in the state legislature. I started off in politics working on the Howard Dean campaign. Since then I've worked for environmental groups, I've worked for labor groups, I've worked on progressive campaigns and for electeds. Sorry, everyone else has paper, I've got my phone. Looking at the candidates on the stage, I need to say our district is blessed to have so many wonderful people who are stepping up. And I think if you look at all of our politics, you know, this is the 46. We're all going to be a bunch of bleeding heart liberals and progressives. There's no question about that. The question then isn't politics. The question is the experience and the ability to get to work on day one. I'm the only candidate in this race endorsed by Representative Farrell. She has seen my work in the legislature, my work on the Kenmore City Council, and she agrees that I'm the person who can hit the ground running on day one, representing our values as we wrap up the budget, as we figure out how to fund our schools. My time in the House, coupled with my time on the Kenmore City Council, makes me uniquely qualified. I understand how the legislature works, but I also, in my role in the Kenmore City Council, I have to negotiate every single Monday with Republicans to pass bills, and that's something that we need more. We need people with more experience to do that, to make things work a little bit. We also need people who have experience at the city level. Too often when the legislature is trying to balance budgets, they look to the cities and take funds from cities to help to make things work. So they may take money from the liquor revenues, or they may dip into the public works trust funds, and then cities are left holding the bag, unable to pay for services that we all need, and unable to pay for infrastructure improvements because they can't get a loan that they thought that they were going to get. That affects people. Cities are who deliver services that affect our lives every single day. And we need people who are going to protect cities and stand up for Kenmore at Lake Forest Park in Seattle. I've put my name on the ballot. I've won. I've passed bills. I've passed budgets. I'm ready to get to work on day one, and I hope I can earn your support.
Hi there. My name is Betsy Walker, and I'm running to be our next state representative. The 46th District deserves a strong, progressive voice in Olympia who will be there for our values, protecting the environment, fully funding education, and standing up for families and children to make sure that Washington remains a great place to live. Here in the 46th, we are really lucky. Not only do we live in a beautiful part of the world, but this is a deep blue district. And I really believe that our representatives should be out there leading the charge for progressive causes that we care about. I want to see us pass that actual serious price on carbon so that we are doing something real here in Washington on climate change. I want us to expand access to paid sick and safely so that you can stay home with your family when you get the flu. And I want to see us work on tax reform so that we can guarantee every child in our state a world-class education, regardless of where they live or where they go to school. Now, the reality is that no legislator works in a vacuum. You don't get anywhere unless you are building strong progressive coalitions to actually pass legislation. I'm committed to working with Paramount Duty and the WEA on education, with the Sierra Club and League of Conservation Voters on the climate, with the growing coalition around the Washington Voting Rights Act, and with NARAL and Planned Parenthood to help defend a woman's right to choose. I've done a lot of doorbelling for Democrats in swing districts around the state, and the reason that I do that is because I've seen firsthand how gridlocked we are in Olympia right now, and we really are not going to make any real progress on the issues that we care about down in Olympia until we start winning at the ballot box. As your representative, I would be committed to helping elect Democrats around the state so that we can build our progressive majority in the House, in the Senate, and start getting things done.
Good evening, fellow Democrats. My name is Javier Valdez, and I'm asking you to send me to Olympia to be your next state representative. Now, I've worked along with many of you, and many of you know me in my role as a leader here in the party, at the state level, at the county level, and right here at the 46th level, serving as your district chair at one point in time. But I want to talk to you first about my personal story, which I really don't talk about very much. I was born and raised in rural Eastern Washington, Moses Lake to be specific. I'm a very proud son and grandson of farm workers and laborers. My pop, well, we called him Pop, did not get past elementary school. My mother did not get past junior high school. For 29 years, she worked at the local Moses Lake potato processing plant as a teamster, working as a general laborer, barely making minimum wage. I would not be here today in front of you as a candidate if it was not for public education. I am a product of public education. At the K through 12 level, as a student graduating from the University of Washington, who relied on Pell Grants, state need grants, college loans, work study to get through college. And later I was able to go on to graduate school and get my degree in the Master's in Public Administration. Now, I have my entire working career fought for civil rights, equal rights, but also the men and women of those in labor. 7 years ago, when I was an employee at Seattle City Light, we were having some injustices done to us, about 135 of us at the utility. And so what did we do? We formed a union to protect our rights and guarantee that the working men and women of the utility had its basic rights protected. And they asked me to lead that union for the very first 5 years. That's a tough job, leading a union of 135 people for the very first time. Even tougher is negotiating a contract across management for the very first time. That's a tough job to do, but it took work, it took commitment, and that's what you get from me as a state legislator if I can represent you in Olympia. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Olivier Benhaim, and I'm excited to be here with you tonight. I didn't know at the beginning of the week that I was going to be here, so it's really a step that I'm taking for myself. I've been a resident for the past 13 years of Kenmore, and I know the 46th district very well. Both my children are currently students at our local high school and junior high school, and my wife and I have been really involved in their process. My political involvement to date has always been at the grassroots level. As the leader of my spiritual congregation, I have opened the doors of my community to be used as a phone bank, both for supporting I-74 and I-594. I've participated personally in too many protests and demonstrations to name here, and support my community's group of activists when they took their kayaks to block the Shell oil rig from leaving Seattle, who have demonstrated in front of Wells Fargo in recent weeks, and also every month roll fresh burritos that we distribute to the poor and the homeless in our neighborhood. I'm also a member of FAN, Faith Action Network, which is a lobbying organization on behalf of faith congregations that brought me to Olympia many times over the last few years. I'm passionate about three things, about a lot of things, but three things mainly. Universal basic income. Experts are telling us that within the next 20 years, 45% of the jobs we know today will disappear. Our economy is undergoing a major shift, and despite what Trump says, the jobs we have already lost are not coming back. Technology is changing the face of work. We need a solution, universal basic income. I believe this will ease the pain of the transition and will end once and for all homelessness and poverty. My other 2 points are...
That's time. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's all right.
Hi, my name is Jill Gary. Thank you all for your service. It's so exciting to be here. I feel the same way when I'm sitting on school board. I am your current sitting school board director for Seattle Public Schools. That means I've already run a very hotly contested campaign, knocked on doors, did all of that work, raised $50,000, and won as the underdog with 26 points. So I know how to run a campaign. I know how to do that part of the job, because that will eventually be part of this, if you want your decision to stay. I'm currently running a directing a $1.1 billion agency employing 6,000 employees, one of Washington's largest employers, and looking out for the education of our 54,000 public school kids all across our city. I understand the funding issues. I am the legislative liaison for the district. I've been working with David Vogt and Jerry Collette on these issues. So I will hit the ground running on that particular issue. But the thing about that issue is every issue that affects schools every issue that we're talking about affects schools. Homelessness affects schools, trauma affects schools, mental health affects schools. They come into our schools. So we need to make sure we have a very strong social safety net if we're going to solve the education issue. That has to be considered in funding basic ed. But beyond that, I am the Washington State School Director Liaison. I know school directors all over this state, and I can go to their representatives with them and talk to them about what this means. I'm a former legal services attorney, so I understand the interests of the poor and how the state has to work for them if we're going to be true progressive Democrats. And I am a former administrative law judge. And the legislators have to be fair partners with our agencies. We have to be careful not to give them unfunded mandates or to put too much on them. We need to make sure that government is working and working well. I want to be like Justin Farrell and bring your interests back any way I can and embed them in the legislation before me. She's been a wonderful advocate for our kids and family, and I want to be that advocate for you.
Good evening. My name is Lila Rabe, and as the name even states, I'll start with that part of the story in that I am the child of immigrants. And as a first-generation American, I personally had the experience of being an outsider. And what is it to be the one to write your own notes for school because your parents don't write English well enough to do that, and find my way from the outside in. Jump forward, finishing medical school. My first job was as a transport physician. I jumped into helicopters and flew all over California getting the most seriously ill children into critical care hospitals where they could be properly cared for. A week before my first child was born, I had a very, very serious call, a child who actually coded several times on our trip. And while we thankfully brought her to the hospital safely, my unborn baby definitely felt that stress. And when he was born, I ended up sitting in the neonatal intensive care unit next to the parents whose children I had transported the weeks before, and suddenly I was a parent and I was a patient. And so that divide, the divide of having privilege and power as a provider, and then the divide of being somewhat helpless, afraid, feeling very vulnerable. That is a divide that I have walked across and been on both sides in various capacities in my life. And as a legislator, I would again sort of cross that divide. I am now a constituent, and I would hope to represent you on that other side, but never lose track and never lose touch of what it is I would be doing there. Because I would be there as your representative and serving the interests of the people of the district and hopefully the state, so that we can actually lessen that divide and bring us closer together as a community.
Okay, I'm going to begin the short answer question portion of our evening. I'm actually going to split it up between short answers and lightning round, so just so no one gets too comfortable. For these questions, we're going to have 60 seconds for a response. And again, I'll let you go over if you're finishing a sentence, but if you go too far over, I'm going to cut you off. And the first person to answer this question will be Lori, and again, we'll go the same direction. So, okay, first question. This has to do with transit funding in Sound Transit 3. House Democrats recently voted to update the MVET evaluation schedule used to determine the card tab bill for voters in the Sound Transit District. Now, this legislation would fix a perceived tax fairness issue by charging a tax that is more closely related to a car's actual value, but could cost Sound Transit as much as $2 billion in revenue for Sound Transit 3 projects. So the question is two parts. The first is, would you have voted for this bill? The second part is, how will you work to protect transit funding against any revenue shortfalls that could result from legislative action or a lack of federal support from the Trump administration?
Well, I'm really glad.
You stand up too.
Here. Hang on.
Green button, sorry.
Please stand up. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I'm so glad you picked a question that is just right there in my area of expertise. I know a little bit about this, obviously having been on the other side of the door of where those caucus discussions are going on and where legislators are dealing with this issue as well as many others. It certainly seems to me that we need to figure out a better methodology for determining the MVAT and how much money is going to go into this. I understand that there are a lot of concerns about losing money, so we can't say, okay, we're going to do something and then lose the revenue that we need so desperately to build the infrastructure that we need. I really like the proposals that allow for the gas tax money and other monies to be used for public transportation. I would have voted for as far as I know, I would have voted for the Democrats' proposal on this. And again, I know that this is one of those complicated issues where I would need to become much more educated and look to my colleagues Judy Cliburn and others, who know their stuff, Representative Haney, our own legislators, to become better informed on this so I could adequately represent this district.
So I'll start off by saying that I did a lot of work on the Sound Transit 3 campaign. Because of my prodding, Kenmore was the first city to pass a resolution in support of that. We beat out Seattle and everybody else. So I am a firm believer in transit and in Sound Transit. But the valuation schedule that was used was a mistake. It's eroding trust in government and in our tax system by putting out what is frankly an unfair valuation schedule. The legislature made a mistake when they put in the old schedule that frankly, built Tim Ivan's career. So yes, I would be in favor of fixing that schedule, but if we do that, we absolutely need to dig into multimodal funding or other available sources, and we need to backfill every single dollar that Sound Transit loses, because we cannot afford for things to not be on time and on budget as promised to voters.
Yeah, so this is pretty lousy because, quite frankly, it's a mistake that should have been found before the bill was voted on, and it wasn't. And the reality is that even though, yes, we desperately need those $2 billion to go into our transit funding, we can't expect people to pay taxes on more than their property is actually worth. If somebody came up to you and said, oh, we're going to say that your house is worth $50,000 more than it actually is, you have to pay taxes on that, you can't sell it for that, but that's how much it costs on paper, you'd be upset. And so Nigel's completely right, that does erode trust in our public tax system, and it's a problem we had to fix. That said, I'm a bus commuter. I rely on Sound Transit to get to work every single day, and I'm absolutely committed to making sure that we come up with the extra revenue necessary to fill that hole. I would support both taking money from our gas taxes and also a new price on carbon to make sure that we are actually funding transit by also helping the environment.
I voted for Sound Transit 3, probably like most of you here, but as Nigel and Betsy have alluded to, Sound Transit could have used an alternative method. Yes, it was in the ballot title, if you read it all the way down your voter's pamphlet, that they were going to use, that they had the option of using the blue book value. But the trust was eroded when they used that, when they could have actually used the actual resale value of someone's car. My car is 9 years old, went up $100. No, I can afford that, but for a working family of four, probably not. What we can do, of course, is to make sure that we continue to support our transit. And in terms of your question, like how to save it on a federal level, Donald Trump's budget actually eliminates the funding for Sound Transit to go over to Linwood. So we're going to have to rely on Senator Patty Murray and Senator Maria Cantwell to do a lot of heavy lifting for us to ensure that those funds survive. Because if we don't, our entire Sound Transit package proposal will be in jeopardy.
Well, I'm glad you're asking this question because as of 2 hours ago, I just paid that bill. Literally 2 hours ago before I came. And my bill just doubled. And it was upsetting. And I called actually to check out why suddenly I went from where I was last year to literally double, over $500. I have an electric vehicle because I mind the environment. I have solar panels on my roof so that I can charge my car from the sun. So I'm really conscious of what I do for the environment. And I think this was a mistake. That my car, which I bought used because I can't afford it, was valued at $13,000 when I paid for it. And the taxes that I paid was because my car was, according to the book, at $26,000. And so I think it is outrageous. I think we need to fix it. And I think we need to invest in different ways of taxing in order to get the transit that we need for our region.
You know, going this late in the game, you hear all these great explanations. And so I have to say that I agree with most of them. Of course, we have to have our laws make sense. I live with a Republican. I'm sleeping with the enemy, but trust me, he's pointing out every single time it looks like there is a tax that doesn't make sense, and we know whose hands that plays into. So, of course, we have to make sure that our taxes are based in reality. That's the first start. And then we're going to see cuts from the federal government all over the place. And so we're going to have to look and continue to look for more funding sources. I really do like the idea of making people pay for the services that they use. If you buy gas and you're polluting the environment and buses take care of that, then that's where we look. We look for those kinds of solutions. And beyond that, we start making business pay their fair share for the services that people are using to get to work.
So to echo Jill, it is a little bit of an interesting thing to come in late in the round here. I too voted for the transit package and am a supporter of having public transit available that's safe and clean for our environment. And the resounding theme that you're going to hear, I think, over and over again tonight is one about revenue and the shortfall there. And whether it be transit, or whether it be healthcare, or whether it be education, we are running into the same issue over and over again. And it will hugely come down from the federal government as well. So we need to get creative, and we need to start thinking about how we're going to fund all the things that we need to fund in our community. And so would I have voted for it? To answer your question. Likewise, I think going in, I would have followed the Democratic lead with that. And I say on top of that, this also isn't my area of strength, but I do consider myself as a physician a lifelong learner. And this would be part of my challenge and part of my goal going in is really to continue to learn about this and other subjects as well.
I support public transit. I also support making our tax system less regressive. I would have voted to make that not only more accurate and more fair, but less regressive. We have 495 discretionary tax breaks, mostly for corporations in our state. We give away more money every year than we bring in. There are tax exemptions that could be closed on businesses that are polluting our environment that could cover this bill. I fully support doing that rather than making our tax system more regressive, rather than making it harder for working families to pay their bills, including their gas bill if they've moved further out, if they have moved into the suburbs because they can no longer live in the city. Transit doesn't reach that far, and I fully support looking at ways to make our tax system more fair.
Thank you. Do you guys have your yes/no cards ready?
No.
Uh-oh. So I'll just make a plug right now. You were handed some note cards earlier, or maybe you saw some note cards available. If you want to start thinking about turning those back in to Hunter or wearing the red shirt, feel free to do so. This won't be your last opportunity to do that. But I'm just reminding you.
We can double up, make it some of their note cards and their donations.
Hey, that's a great idea. So this is a good opportunity to remind you that this venue isn't free. Your legislative district Democrats are paying for this, and this is a service that we weren't necessarily planning on providing. So if you did have a few extra dollars to help us out with this sort of unanticipated expense, that would be really appreciated. So, and I'll do the program reminder later. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our lightning round, and I promise that the first question is the wordiest, and then I'll get better. Okay, so one of the first votes you might take as a legislator could be on the state budget. The Education Advocacy Group, Washington's Paramount Duty, asked candidates this week to sign a pledge, insisting on using new progressive revenue sources to fully fund K through 12 and fill the McCleary gap. The pledge asked candidates to commit to not voting for any budget that would make Washington's tax system even more regressive. So the question is, have you signed or will you agree to this pledge? Okay. Next question. Several Democrats in the House have introduced a bill this session that would de-link standardized test results from high school graduation. Would you support this bill? And your next question. Would you support a state law mandating students receive more lunch and recess time in public schools? Okay, thanks. Switching gears a little bit. Would you support legislation to lift the state ban on rent control? Would you support legislation to lift the state ban on rent control?
Jesse, can you have them stand up and hold the cards over their heads?
Hey, good idea. Stand up, everyone.
I feel like Nigel still has an advantage.
I don't have a problem with that.
All right, this is the last question in this little mini lightning round. And it is, would you support amending the Growth Management Act to require comprehensive plans to reduce greenhouse gas pollution and to adapt communities to climate change? So I'm guessing there's been a lot of, I can't actually see their answers, but they're probably disagreeing a whole lot on these. You guys can have a seat, thank you. Keep your cards handy for later, but we're going to move back to short answers. And Nigel will be the first person to answer this question, and we'll continue to move the same direction. Okay, this question is about fair wages in labor law enforcement. Voters in Washington overwhelmingly approved an initiative to increase the minimum wage and provide paid sick leave to millions of workers, but compliance with labor laws is still an issue for many workers. What are your plans to ensure that workers actually receive the wages and benefits that they're entitled to by law?
That is a really good question. I think we need to have our departments oversee that, making sure that it's on that people's minimum wage and how to report any of these discrepancies is part of the poster that everybody has in their break room. I assume that's already the case, but I'm not 100% certain. And we should be increasing outreach to low-wage workers to make sure that what they're getting is what they deserve. The voters overwhelmingly said that workers deserve a raise, and we need to ensure that they all get that. So we should make sure that whoever's doing the enforcement has the resources that they need to adequately keep an eye on that and enforce.
You know, this is a really difficult problem, not because it's a law that we shouldn't enforce, but because it's a law that is difficult to enforce. The people who are most likely to be victimized by wage theft or by being told that they can't take their sick leave are often the ones who are most in need of protection and the ones least likely to actually seek official help. My first job out of college was actually making sandwiches at a Quiznos for minimum wage. I was actually trying to earn enough money that I could buy a plane ticket to go to China, my first real job out of college. And I found out the week that I left that my boss was not going to be paying me for the time that I spent on any of my state-mandated breaks because they didn't think that they had to. I was leaving the country and I couldn't fight it, but there are a lot of people with a lot less resources than I had who don't have that information, who never see the sign in the break room, and we really need to be making sure that we are doing the outreach necessary through our organizing as Democrats to be reaching them and make sure that they know their rights.
Very good question, Jesse. Well, myself, as a member of organized labor of ASME Council 2, Local 21C, this is an issue that's very important to me, to making sure that workers who are doing the job on behalf of all of us are making sure that they're getting paid and getting represented. I think what we could do is mirror what the City of Seattle has done regarding the implementation of their minimum wage law. So the City of Seattle created Office of Labor Standards, where folks are out on the ground talking to workers and ensuring that they are not taken advantage of. We also, in the city contracting unit, have people out in the field at our construction sites on city projects, again, to make sure that those most vulnerable people who are more likely to be taken advantage of, people of color, undocumented people, that they know their rights on the field, and they know where to go in case there's any violation of their rights or not getting paid. Now, I'm not going to say I'm an expert on what the state is doing to making sure that they're implementing this, but the City of Seattle has done actually a pretty good job in leading this, and it might want to be a program that the state also mirrors.
When I first moved to Seattle, my first job was as a barista at Starbucks. I don't know if you heard, it's a small coffee company. There was a store in my neighborhood. One of the things that Starbucks did really well is that we spent, as a new hire, the first week in training. And we trained, obviously, on everything that's to do with coffee and making drinks, but one of the things that we trained on was also around the labor laws that Starbucks followed, and put the responsibility on all of us to make sure that our managers at the store level were complying with those labor laws. It was not just a poster in the back room because nobody read this, but it was in fact hours spent in a training room learning about all of this, learning all our rights, and learning who to contact in case our rights were violated. I'm thinking that we should impose on the companies that do business in this state spend time training their employees as they are hired about their rights and the compliance of labor laws within the company.
There's a number of things that we can do. One, we do need to make sure people know their rights, and we need to make sure that there are laws and that we're enforcing laws that allow people to organize. And then we need to make sure that we continue to fund legal services, because those are the people who go out there and represent these workers, especially in Eastern Washington. And then we need to make sure that we're making laws that are fair and that we have lots of administrative law judges, and we're encouraging people to know their rights to file fair wage claims with the Office of Administrative Hearings, because that's one of the judges that I was. I did hearings for the for Labor and Industries, the fair wage claim hearings. And so we need to make sure rights are known and that we are funding the people out there who are doing the work, going out there and finding people who need to be protected through legal services.
So I would be in agreement that we definitely need to make sure that laborers know their rights. But we also could do enforcement on the end of businesses. You know, all businesses get licenses. Is there a process in place when the businesses interact with the systems that they already must interact with to educate the business leaders and to put down a little bit of a heavy foot if you don't follow, and really let that process, which is already existing, these businesses do have to go in and report and get their licenses, let that process carry some of the weight. And then I would also suggest unusual suspects. I know in my office all the time, we talk about, so can you stay home with your kid when he's sick? Can you get the break that you need to pump for breastfeeding? And I find myself in the position to educate. And so the education doesn't always have to come with folks coming out on job sites. There are lots of individuals who interact with these susceptible laborers who could be educators. And if we all as a community have this knowledge and pass it around, we again, together, can help make this happen.
In my most recent job, I worked with the elderly, and home care workers that go into our seniors' homes are some of the least able to protect rights like these. And when we look at how people receive information, there's a lot of the normal mechanisms that don't reach there. I know also in our schools, when we need to reach the families, we need to make sure that we are translating it. We need to make sure that we're working with organizations that already have relationships in those communities. Jerry, David, and Jessen did a great job of partnering and getting out in the community to work with organizations like unions, like community partners, that really let us reach further and make sure that the workers know their rights, that they're willing to stand up for their rights, that they know that there are people there to help them. And then also, I agree, let's make sure that the businesses know the rules and know that we're watching so that they follow those rules.
It's hard to disagree with what others have said. I agree with what others have said. People have to know their rights and we have to enforce the laws. I feel that there are a lot of things that I know some about, and fortunately I know people to go to learn a lot more about whatever the subject is. And in this case, being able to partner with folks in the labor community and having relationships with folks in the labor community would be very, very beneficial to me in really looking at what are some of the strategies and solutions that we could impose. That's what we have to do. We have to listen, learn, collaborate. Getting people out of poverty is huge. Anything that we're doing to stand in the way of helping people, families, be able to take care of their children because they're not getting the wages that they are entitled to is going to continue to perpetuate poverty, which is at the cause or at the root of so many of the issues that we have. So I want to make sure these things work. I want to make sure that the agencies providing the services such as home care have the ability to pay their workers what it is they deserve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question. I just want to give a plug again. If you have any no-card questions, get those to Hunter or somebody, and actually I wouldn't mind seeing some of them too at some point. So, all right. The next question deals with pay equity. Women's median annual earnings in Washington for full-time year-round work is $41,300. For men, that number is $53,000. Among women from the largest racial ethnic groups, Asian Pacific Islander women have the highest earnings at $45,000 annually. Hispanic women have the lowest at $27,000 annually. How will you work to close the pay equity gap?
So I was actually just talking with Thomason about this last night because she's been working on the gender pay equity bill. This is a really serious issue, particularly for young women who are my age, because the reality is that I'm making about what my male colleagues do. I'm single, I don't have kids yet, nobody's put me on a mommy track. The reality is, as soon as my friends have started having kids, the same is not true. One friend who was so excited to come back from her maternity leave, and the day she got back to the office, she found out that the guy who she more or less hired as a temp to cover her desk while she was gone was going to be hired into a new position as her boss. She quit the next day and went home, because why would you bother? If your company isn't going to value you, why stick around? The reality is that we have a lot of education to do around making sure that women can stay in the workforce, that there's actually access to a wide range of services they need, including subsidized preschool so you can go back to work, to make sure that this gender gap isn't happening only on the business side, but also because of structural reasons that we need to fix.
Thank you. It takes the will of the governor and our state legislature to make pay equity among our working women and men equal. So one of the things that the city of Seattle has done to look at this issue is that it's recently completed a comprehensive study, or is in the process of doing a comprehensive study, of showing where everybody's salary is. So everyone can see, and posted that on the web, so everyone can see, all employees, how they compare with their coworkers. And it's a good way of showing whether or not, if someone who's doing just as much as work as you are getting paid the same. And so we need to find creative ways in the legislature, support our human resources department, and looking at this, and whether that's a passage of legislation, but to making sure that we are going to enforce, to make sure that everyone gets paid their fair share of work. Thank you.
This is a question that is close to my heart. I have a 16-year-old daughter. And obviously I agree with all that others have said. But to me, the bottom of this is a needed conversation in our society, in our state, about white male privilege. I think at the bottom of this is what we need to address. I think we need to talk about discrimination I think we need to talk about racism. I think we need to talk about all the ways that in our state still, in our city of Seattle, we see the discrimination happening in our streets, in our neighborhoods, and we are one of the most segregated cities in the US. So I think this is the core of what we need to address. And we can't do that just by legislating it on a surface.
I love that answer because it gets to the heart. We have to change culture, but until then we need more practical things. Women need access to good daycare for their kids and good preschools, and I thank Ed Murray for making sure that that happens in Seattle. We need to look at doing that all over, because that's something that prevents women from going back to work right away. And worrying about your kids and who's caring for them takes you away from work. Women are making those decisions all the time. Culturally, it'd be nice if men made those decisions. Then the other thing is we need to look at the laws. I love the transparency of wages, but another thing is, what about prohibiting employers from asking what your former rate of pay was? Because that's one of the things they use. They don't want to bump you too far up based upon your last employment, even if it's lower than your male counterpart. Those are the kinds of things we have to continue to dig in and look at in terms of making a change in this area.
I too, Olivier, really appreciate you bringing up the systemic issue, because that is the real root cause. It horrifies me that we continue to have this conversation. I remember when I was little, dreaming about this being different, and now I'm having the same conversation with my kids and explaining why they have to learn about gender inequality in school and why those classes exist. It is crazy that we are still here, but we are. And in terms of the practical, as you were mentioning, Jill, the companies that provide paternity leave as well as maternity leave, they see a different trajectory. And I really, really would encourage us to pass legislation that encourages all individuals to be involved fully as parents, which will then also allow them equitably to be involved as workers.
As a female software engineer, I have definitely experienced this and have had the opportunity to mentor multiple women through their careers in the technology industry. I appreciate Betsy bringing up the mommy track. A dear friend of mine works on pay equity in the technology industry, and one of the things that she's found is that when companies implement parental leave, regardless of whether you're a man, a woman, or somewhere else on the gender binary, or non-binary, anyway, that brings about equal treatment of people. Letting men and women go home and spend time with their families when they have new children, adoptive parents, makes it so that women aren't penalized for having children. And if we look around the world, this is the case in many other countries as well.
Well, I agree. I can't believe we're still having this conversation. Although I will say there has been some progress. When I was in high school, I tried to get a job at a Dairy Queen and was told, no, girls can't lift the ice cream. So therefore, I worked on my muscles over the years with that ice cream. Again, we're talking about wages. We're talking about people who are trying to raise children in a healthy, nurturing, safe way. And their ability to do that is so dependent on their income. We have got to deal with income inequality. We have got to deal with getting people out of poverty. We have to deal with institutional racism. I think that is deep in this, and certainly we still have gender bias. We're so fortunate that we have legislators who have taken this on. I'm glad that Representative Satin was brought up. She provided tremendous leadership around this, and I think worked, again, on both sides of the aisle, both houses, to make sure that something could happen related to this. And seeing a picture of the DNR standing there together saying, yes, we made this happen, is a good thing, and that's the kind of thing that I think I could bring to Olympia.
I think passing Representative Robinson's paid medical family leave bill is essential so that people can actually take time off and be with their families when they have a new member entering their family. I also think that Representative Sen's bill is essential. But I think the state should lead by example. I think the state should do what Seattle did and dig through our employment and our salary data and make sure that we're actually doing what we want and what we're telling everybody else to do, that we don't have inequities between men and women doing the same job with the same experience and the same degrees. Because if we want other people to do that, we can pass a law, but we should also make sure that we're not doing it ourselves and make sure that we clean that up. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's essential if we're going to lead. You gotta lead by example.
Everybody's looking at me. What's going on? All right. At this point, I'm going to ask that we move to the lightning round again. So get your yes/no cards out. And stand up. Nigel kind of stole my thunder with his first question. Representative Robinson introduced a bill this session that would call for up to 26 weeks of paid leave following the birth or adoption of a child and would cover up to 90% of pay for low-income workers. Do you support this legislation? California has been in the news lately. They're considering moving to a single-payer healthcare system. Do you support moving to that for Washington State? Do you disagree with the person next to you on anything? Next question. Do you support the reinstatement of parole in Washington State? Okay. Do you support eliminating the Washington Presidential Caucus in favor of a primary? Okay, I'm going to move on to one of the audience questions that I got. Which was, do you support a housing first policy to alleviate the homeless epidemic?
Right, repeat the question.
This is a yes/no still.
Oh.
That's just not a yes/no question. I'm sorry.
It is, do you support a housing first policy? So it was a yes/no. And also, it's your fault, audience. So. Yeah. Okay, you guys can have a seat. So. Okay, I'm still looking for audience suggestions if possible. I'm going to go ahead and plug our program. We have a general meeting coming up next week on the 15th. That's Thursday night. It'll be here. That's our regular monthly meeting, so we're not going to be dealing with electing a new legislator. We do have a really cool program. We're featuring Lynn Dotson and Richard Burton, two labor leaders, and they're going to come and talk about the relationship between labor and the Democratic Party, kind of evaluate that from their perspective and talk about things that we can do to strengthen that relationship. I hope to see a big crowd there Thursday as well. So,
Point of inquiry. Did you move the chair's election to August or to July?
there'll be an email going out about that. But yeah, August actually. So spoiler alert, August. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to a short answer question. This one has to do with voting rights. For 5 years straight, the Washington Voting Rights Act has failed to pass both houses of the legislature. What other actions, besides passing that, would you propose or support that address the structural barriers to ensuring fair representation across our state?
That's a really broad question. Absolutely would be in favor of that proposal. But I guess let me talk about my work at the City of Seattle as a member of the city's Race and Social Justice team when I was at the utility Seattle City Light. I was on that team for 10 years. We've always tried to battle and tackle how to bring and address racial injustice, race and social justice, and equity into our policies. And that's one thing that we could be doing across the state. When we're passing laws, what is the fiscal impact? But again, what is the social impact of affecting our people of color, our minority communities, and our lower income communities? I know I'm sounding broad here because your question was pretty broad, but myself as a person of color, it's something, of course, that I'm very in tune with. And being involved in race and social justice groups that I have. It's something that I'll continue to work with our social justice groups, all of our agencies throughout the state, and I'll continue to work with my fellow legislators on educating on this issue.
I believe that this goes with what I mentioned earlier. I think we have cultural issues with race and racism and discrimination. But in a simple way, two things that I would do. I would make it automatic for anyone to be already registered. Anyone who's a resident of our state would be automatically registered. And one very simple other thing is that I would pre-stamp those envelopes that would be mailed for voting, so that nobody has to figure out if they have a stamp and find a stamp. And sometimes that's the one obstacle. It's a little thing, but it makes a big difference.
We have a lot of things that we can do. Let's start with civics and education so that we know that our kids are graduating from school knowing what it means to be a participating member. We need to break down our barriers, and Democrats, we need to get out of the blue bubble of the Puget Sound and figure out ways to make connections with people all over the state. We have families that should be voting for education, and we are leaving that resource untapped. I want to figure out a way to tie with all my fellow school directors all over the state, bring them in, talk to the representatives, but go back out, figure out ways for them to go into their communities and energize their families to be voting about this issue. Because once we get them to the polls, we make sure that they're being registered, we make sure that they're voting, we will start seeing changes in seats.
So most directly to deal with voting, I would completely support automatic registration for voters, and I would also support the idea of same-day registration at the polls, again, to remove as many barriers as possible. And then bigger picture, gerrymandering. Huge, huge issue. And if we could find a way to make sure that our legislative districts are drawn up in ways that are equitable and really give full voices to everyone who deserves to be represented, I think that will go a long way so that we can have really fair and equal representation in our legislative bodies.
My answer to this question is two parts. So on the legislative side, the League of Women Voters has worked on a number of pieces of legislation, one of which is to do postage paid envelopes. There's no reason why we as a state cannot do postage paid envelopes, just to take out that one additional barrier. Also expanding ballot boxes. So we have done additional work, and I appreciate that work, but there's tremendous opportunity to get more ballot boxes if we can't get the postage paid. Then there's also community outreach. So similar to the question about workers' rights, we need to do community outreach. We need to reach out to people and understand why aren't they voting, and how can we help them vote? How can we help them understand that their vote matters? One of the biggest things I hear back from people who have been disengaged from the political process is that they don't think their vote matters. And so that is working with communities.
Well, again, I agree with a lot of the good suggestions that have come up. I think part of the question was, why has this not passed? And there's some organizations, League of Women Voters One, the One America, and others who have been working on this issue, working with legislators. And I think it's really important as a legislator to have somebody who can go and talk with the other side and to be able to find out, why is this so controversial? We all want people to vote, right? That's a right we have, and it's embarrassing how low our voter turnout is. So I think we need to build that collaborative effort to figure out what's going on. All the Eastern Washington legislators are probably not opposed to this. I think that if we can make voting more accessible to folks, if we can do something about the laws that may be standing in the way, if we can bridge some of those divides, then we will see a more equitable system and people really having the opportunity to participate in the process.
I actually want to disagree with what Lori just said. I don't think that they all want everybody to vote. I think we all know that when people vote, when more people vote, Democrats win, and the Republicans realize that. And that's why they push back against things like this, and voter-voter, and pre-registering kids when they're 16, 17. And we need to address all of those issues. I agree with what everybody said about, paid postage, extra ballot boxes if we're not going to do the paid postage. Something that we also need to look at, though, is restoring felons' rights to vote. We remove people from society, we take away their ability to be part of society, And then we wonder why they don't feel like they're part of the society, why they maybe go back to their previous life of crime, or why maybe they're forced to go back to that life. It's because we set them up for failure by taking away a lot of their rights. And the vote is one of the most central to that, and we need to address that.
So for the last few years, you've actually been able to re-register if you've served your time in society and you're off parole, which is great. I do voter registration at Hempfest every year, and I've had grown men break down in tears when they realize that they can actually vote again because they thought that they'd lost that right for a minor drug possession charge. The Washington Voting Rights Act should absolutely be one of our priorities because the reality is that representation matters. That act came out of an ACLU case that was won against the city of Yakima when they realized that their gerrymandered district city elections made it impossible for Latinos, who were 40% of the population, to actually elect representation. I went over there in Norbelt for Latina candidates in the first election they had after that change, and now we have 4 Latinas on the city council. Representation matters, and we need to get this done.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to make everyone stand up again. This is going to be a lightning round completely comprised of questions that I got on note cards. If you could refrain from yelling at the moderator, that would be great. Okay, first one. Do you support a carbon tax? A carbon tax. Okay. Next question. Would you consider supporting a compromise bill that established a carbon tax and dividend system in exchange for repealing Governor Inslee's clean air rule? Okay, we got a few questions on this. Do you support a universal basic income, yes or no?
No income.
All right. Would you support a state income tax if the courts rule it legal? Okay, and the last one, and someone has really great cursive, so, okay. If some type of income tax could be implemented in Washington, would you support a partial rollback of sales and property taxes? Okay, thanks everybody. You can have a seat. I did get some additional note cards. Most of them are on topics that I promise I'm going to get to on Saturday. This is going to be the last question. It'll be a short answer, and I know that there were big issues that we didn't get to tonight, and if you come Saturday, I bet you'll get to hear answers on those questions. This next one, the last one, is also a pretty broad question, and I'll just read it. Oh, but before I read it, I wanted to give a thank you to a few people. First of all, everybody who's here helping, but particularly Andy, who's been standing there with his arms up the whole night. We're streaming this, and it'll be on YouTube later for anybody who wants to rewatch or didn't make it tonight. So, thank you. All right, last question. Often the best lawmakers are able to distinguish themselves in their service by becoming a thought leader or a key spokesperson on a particular issue. What is the one issue that you will lead on in Olympia? And how will you gain the respect of your peers and voters to gain influence and move forward a progressive agenda?
My one issue, the one I'm most passionate about, is universal basic income. I think this is what we need for the near and not so near future. I think it is going to be critical for our children when the economy is shifting and the jobs are disappearing, that we provide a floor for everybody to never fall into poverty and never find themselves homeless again. This is what I would advocate in Olympia. This is what I would do also to reach across the aisle, because I think we can reach to the other side of the aisle, because basic universal basic income would allow us to do away with some government programs that our Republican friends want to see taken out. I would also say before I go, I won't be able to be here Saturday morning. It's Shabbat, and I am leading actually a bat mitzvah, a young woman who is coming of age. So I won't be here, I won't be able to speak to you. Please remember me on Saturday. Thank you.
I guess it comes as no surprise that the ample funding of public education is going to be the one I champion. And defining what that basic education is, we need to re-examine it because, like I said before, that includes healthcare, mental health, food security, homelessness. All of those things are wrapped into education. So we cannot fund education on the backs of our poor because those costs are just going to roll back in. I will do it as I have been by making connections with other directors that I know now all over the state and going to their legislative delegation and talking to them. We have to realize that they are struggling to pay their teachers to make sure that their kids are well educated. We need to be able to have those conversations recognizing the differences between here where we raise levies for kids and there where they cannot. And they don't even have certified teachers for their kids. So I can actually have that conversation in a meaningful way and break the logjam that we see now.
So likewise, not a surprise, as a pediatrician, my primary issue would be one of healthcare. And it is astonishing to me that in this time of tremendous upheaval with the healthcare on a federal level and on a state and local level, we do not have a single physician in our legislature. So when it comes time to deal with the repercussions of what comes down from DC, it is crucial that we have a voice in that legislature who understands not only the patient perspective, because we all have that, but multiple patient perspectives, and also the perspective of what are the real implications for whatever changes we put out there. Because we need to continue to provide quality healthcare that's based on science and evidence, and it is, in my opinion, a basic fundamental human right. We have a society where if you choose not to have healthcare, we do not leave you bleeding outside of our emergency room door. We do not ask you, could you choose to sign on to the ACA? We bring you in and we take care of you, and if we are going to support that level of support of our fellow human beings, we need to have someone who understands that system.
I was pulled into politics by my daughter, who is now 8 years old. Education funding is critical to me, but it led me quickly to our tax system. We can't have any of the things that are important to us until we fix our tax system. This would be my number one issue. I would crisscross and have been crisscrossing the state, talking to people and helping them understand how our legislature has not been representing them. Not been representing their interests, not been standing up to corporate interests, allowing tax breaks to be given more away than we bring in. If we had Idaho's tax system, you know, Idaho, that bastion of progressive values, if we had Idaho's tax system, we would have twice as much tax revenue. We have to fix our tax system if we're going to do anything else. And that would be my issue. It is my issue, regardless of whether I go.
Well, as I mentioned, over the many years, I have worked on a variety of issues related to children and families, and that would be an area that I would want to continue to work on, from child welfare to children's health to juvenile justice, etc. I have had the good fortune of working with leaders like Representative Kagi on child welfare issues, and there's a bill that we still want to have happen in this session, creating a Department of Children, Youth, and Families that would change the way children and families are served. So that would be, those are the areas I'd still want to work on a lot. But again, we have to start looking at what's beneath the children and families, others ending up in deep end systems. And that, I believe, relates an awful lot to economic inequalities, poverty, and institutional racism. And we have got to address those if we really want to keep kids out of the child welfare system, keep people out of the correction system, keep people out of our public assistance system. We have to work on those. So all of that, and also just really focusing on what is beneath it, what's causing it.
These are all really great issues that everybody's bringing up. I would focus on transportation. I think transportation is essential to our health as a region, for our economy, for people's ability to have housing choice. It affects our environment with our carbon footprint. And for too long, WashDOT has spent all this time worrying about how to move cars instead of how to move people and goods. We all know maybe moving cars is what works out in Yakima, but during rush hour, cars aren't moving in the 46th district. We need Washington State to be a partner with us in finding other ways to get people around so that we can continue our economic growth, so we can give people more housing choices, so we can bite into our carbon footprint. It's an important issue, and it's one that if we don't solve, it's going to be detrimental to our entire region.
You know, so when I decided that I was going to run for this appointment, this is a question I got asked several times in a row. What's going to be your issue? What's going to be your issue? And I realized I'm not very good at picking. I managed to get it down to a top 3. I couldn't pick the top 1. And then I realized that I've seen Jessen, in her 4.5 years in the legislature, make progress on transit, on the environment, on rights for pregnant workers, on reproductive health. And you know what, darn it? I'm not picking. I care about all of those things, and I intend to stick around for a good long time to work on them.
Thank you, Betsy. I think it's fair to say that as progressive Democrats, all of us are going to be voting the right way, whether it's healthcare, choice, the environment, transportation, labor laws, up and down the list. So next year is a short session, 60 days. So what's the number 1 topic that I want to work on? And for me, it's a topic that there is no champion in Olympia on. That is, I want to file a bill, and I'll do this every year in the legislature until I get it passed, is to repeal Initiative I-200. It's not a sexy issue, but it's got no champion in Olympia. I-200 was passed by Tim Ivan in 1998 that banned affirmative action programs in government contracting and public education, and it's time somebody address it and bring down those barriers. I work in this field every day. Previously at Seattle City Light, over the last 2 years out of the Seattle Mayor Ed Murray's office, looking at how women and minority contractors, suppliers, consultants can give